I'm 64 now, and if anyone had told me 5 years ago that remarrying could come dangerously close to wiping out everything I'd spent 30 years creating, I would have chuckled in disbelief. But that's exactly what almost happened. The reason I still own my vineyard, my winery, and my independence today boils down to one crucial choice I made when I married Richard Barnes. I never revealed to him or his 3 grown children that the estate we lived on was entirely mine. Every acre, every vine, every bottle, it was all solely in my name. Let me take you back to the start. My name is Catherine Morrison, but most people just call me Kathy. In 1989, when I was 34, I purchased my first 5 acres in Sonoma Valley. I was a single mom working in real estate, and everyone thought I'd taken leave of my senses, a woman going solo to buy raw land in wine country. The bankers practically smirked me out of their offices. But I had a dream, and even more than that, I had sheer determination. I started small, planting my first Pinot Noir vines with my own hands. My daughter Emily was 7 at the time, coming out after school to help, her tiny fingers learning to tie the young shoots to the stakes. It took 3 full years before those vines produced grapes worth crushing, 3 years of daytime real estate work, and evenings plus weekends on the land. 3 years while locals wagered on how soon I'd quit and sell. But I never did. By 1995, I had 15 acres planted and my very first vintage bottled. By 2000, I'd grown to 50 acres and opened a cozy tasting room. By 2010, Morrison Estate Winery was well known. 75 acres of premium Sonoma terroir, a stunning stone winery building, seating for 40 in the tasting room, and features in Wine Spectator. Think about what it takes for one woman to build an empire like that alone. 16-hour days, loans I personally guaranteed, 2 AM checks during harvest to monitor the presses, juggling overdue bills just to keep the power on. Every choice, every risk, every win, it was all me. By the time I turned 60, Emily had earned her viticulture degree from UC Davis and was working at a Napa winery. She chose her own path instead of joining the family business, and I fully supported that. My estate had expanded to 150 acres, worth at least $8 million, probably more. I wasn't ultra-rich, but I was secure, proud of what I'd accomplished, and undeniably lonely. Emily's father had left when she was 3. I dated casually over the years, but nothing serious. Building my dream had consumed me. At 60, with Emily living her own life and the operation running smoothly thanks to my outstanding vineyard manager Carlos, I often rattled around an empty farmhouse. That's when I met Richard, at a charity wine auction in San Francisco. He was 67, a retired investment banker, recently widowed, tall with silver hair and that polished charm from decades of expensive suits and country clubs. He won a case of my 2015 Reserve Pinot and came over to introduce himself. "I've heard terrific things about Morrison Estate," he said warmly. "I'd love to visit your tasting room sometime." He came the following weekend and the next. By the 3rd visit, we were sharing dinners. 6 months in, we were discussing a future together. Richard was attentive and thoughtful. He brought rare books on winemaking, planned romantic getaways to Carmel and Mendocino, and genuinely listened when I talked about the challenges of running a winery in a male-dominated world. He seemed truly impressed by my story. In retrospect, the signs were glaring, but at the time I was just a 60-year-old woman who'd spent most of her adult life alone, finally falling in love. We got engaged after 8 months. He proposed at sunset overlooking my western vineyard, with a ring that had to be worth $20,000. With tears in my eyes, I said yes. That's when the questions began, not from Richard at first, but from his children. There were 3, Derek, 42, in finance like his father, Patricia, 39, a real estate developer, and Mitchell, 35, doing something vague in tech consulting. All lived in the Bay Area and were close to their dad. 2 weeks after the engagement, on their first visit to the estate, Patricia toured the farmhouse like she was appraising it. How many acres? Annual production? Who handles distribution? Any partners? I kept things vague. It's a family-run operation, under the Morrison name for over 30 years. Derek wanted financial details. Revenue for a boutique winery, margins, debt structure. I smiled and said we did well enough. For me, it's about the craft, not the money. Mitchell actually asked about my will. Since you and Dad are marrying, have you considered estate planning? Good for taxes. I was a healthy 60-year-old. I looked to Richard expecting him to shut it down, but he just squeezed my hand and said Mitchell had a point. It was responsible to get affairs in order. Emily flew up from Napa for the wedding. The night before, sipping wine on the porch, she said, "Mom, are you absolutely sure? His kids give me a strange vibe." I brushed it off. They were just protective of their widowed father. But she pointed out how Patricia had eyed the winery buildings, the tasting room, the barrels like she was calculating value. I told her she was overthinking it. Then, "Did you get a prenup?" Yes, I did. My longtime attorney Linda Chen, from my real estate days, insisted. Richard seemed a bit hurt when I brought it up, but he signed without much protest. The prenup was crystal clear. Pre-marriage assets stayed separate. The estate, the business, everything remained mine. What no one knew, not Emily, not Linda, not even Richard, was that I deliberately misled him and his children about the ownership. It wasn't a huge lie, just a careful omission. I implied the estate was generational family property with multiple stakeholders or complicated trusts. When pressed, I'd deflect. It's complex, my attorney handles the details. Dishonest? Maybe. But 30 years of fighting to build and protect my business had sharpened my instincts. Letting Richard's kids see me as a wealthy widow sitting on millions didn't feel safe. And my gut was absolutely right. The wedding was small and beautiful, held on the estate under an arch draped with grapevines. Emily was my maid of honor. His children stood with him, all smiles and gracious. Patricia even hugged me and called me Mom. It should have felt warm, but it came across as rehearsed. No honeymoon, harvest was near, and I couldn't leave Carlos to manage alone. Richard understood. He moved into the farmhouse with his furniture, books, and golf clubs. The first year was genuinely good. He golfed at the local club, hosted his kids for Sunday dinners, and sat with me on the porch evenings, sipping my wine and watching the sunset over the vines. He stayed out of the business and asked few questions. But in the second year, things changed. Derek visited alone one weekend and offered to review the books from a financial planning angle. He said Dad mentioned I might want to expand distribution. I never had. I politely declined. Carlos and I had it handled. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Your family now, families help. Patricia showed up with real estate agents for insurance purposes. Wildfire risks made updates essential. I already had top coverage. She pushed for a recent appraisal. Comparable properties were hitting 12 to 15 million. I told her to leave. Mitchell casually suggested over dinner that many wineries were shifting to e-commerce and direct-to-consumer. He could build a platform at a family discount. We already had a strong website and direct sales. The worst was Richard sliding documents across the table. Just updating beneficiaries, he'd say. I'd read carefully. Often they were powers of attorney or authorizations giving him control over accounts. I'd refuse to sign. He'd turn cold, silent for days, questioning my trust. I noticed him taking calls outside, walking the vine rows out of earshot. Just one of the kids, he'd claim. 3 years in, I returned from a distributor meeting in San Francisco to find Richard, Derek, and Patricia in my winery office with filing cabinets open and papers everywhere. They jumped when I walked in, excuses about looking for insurance documents. I demanded they get out. Richard insisted, I'm your husband, marriages don't have secrets. That night I called Linda. Check the title, confirm everything is still solely in my name. 3 days later, forged transfer deeds and partnership agreements filed with the county, giving Richard and his children ownership stakes. The signatures looked like mine, but badly done. Obvious forgeries, serious fraud. I felt the blood drain from my face, sitting on the porch steps staring at vines I'd planted 3 decades earlier. Next, I contacted an old real estate contact, private investigator Tom Reeves. Dig into Richard, financial history, criminal record, especially his first wife's death and what happened to her estate. 2 weeks later, a thick file. His late wife Margaret died 4 years earlier after transferring her entire $4 million estate to him 6 months before her death, while suffering early-onset Alzheimer's. Her sister contested, alleging coercion or forgery, settled out of court. Richard kept nearly everything. More red flags, Derek sued by a former partner for fraud. Patricia lost her Oregon real estate license over ethics violations. Mitchell fired from multiple jobs. Tom's words, "This is a family of con artists. They've done it before, and they're doing it to you." Fear turned to fury. I wouldn't just escape. I'd make sure they could never do this again. With Linda, we built a rock-solid case: fraud, forgery, attempted theft, criminal charges. A forensic accountant uncovered more forgeries, incriminating emails and texts between Derek, Patricia, and Richard planning how to extract value, plus evidence of a previous wife, Helen, who died in a fall after similar transfers. Her children had contested but lost. I orchestrated the confrontation. A family dinner for our 3rd anniversary on the patio, catered, my finest wines poured. Richard was delighted. Guests arrived. Linda, Tom, Detective Sarah Martinez from the Sonoma County Sheriff's Office, plus 2 surprises: Margaret's sister Joan and Helen's daughter Catherine. Richard went pale. I calmly explained this was extended family too. Derek tried to leave. The detective stopped him. Raising my glass of 2018 reserve, I laid it all out: the forgeries, the proof, the past victims right there. Denials collapsed under evidence. Arrests followed, chaos, rights read, tears, threats. Richard whispered he had truly loved me. I leaned in so only he could hear. "No, you loved my property, but it was never yours. I bought it, built it, earned it, and I protected it." The case took 8 months. Derek and Patricia pled guilty to fraud and forgery, 2 years each. Richard went to trial, convicted of elder abuse, fraud, conspiracy, plus reopened investigations into Margaret and Helen's deaths. 12 years, effectively a life sentence at his age. Divorce finalized 3 months after arrests. The prenup held firm. He got nothing, bankrupted by legal fees. Mitchell cooperated and received probation. Today, at 69, Morrison Estate Winery is thriving. Emily came back, inspired by watching her mom fight for what was hers, and now shares the legacy. Carlos just celebrated 20 years with me. I doubt I'll remarry, but I share this story with anyone who will listen, especially women, especially older women who have built something themselves. When I married at 60, I chose not to disclose full ownership. Some might say that means I never truly trusted Richard, so I shouldn't have married him. But here's the lesson: protecting yourself isn't distrust, it's wisdom. The person you love today might change, or reveal who they always were. Your life's work doesn't become shared just because you want companionship. That quiet omission gave me 3 years, time to spot the red flags, gather evidence, and save everything. If I'd revealed the truth from day one, they might have moved faster, harder. I could have ended up stripped bare like Margaret and Helen. My advice for late-life marriages, or any marriage: know exactly what you own, secure it legally, and don't hesitate to keep some truths close until you're certain. Love is wonderful, but naivety is dangerous. Never gamble what you've earned. I still make wine, walk my rows at dusk touching those original vines, taste every vintage, make every blend myself, and welcome guests with pride. Now when someone orders my reserve and asks about the property, I tell them plainly, "This is mine. I bought it. I built it. I own it, every vine, every bottle, every acre. And it will stay that way." I wasn't their victim. I became their reckoning. I'm still here on my land, living free. And that's everything.